Supreme Court refuses restoration of water and power to Manus Center. Manus takes centre stage at Melbourne Cup.
Refugees are suffering.
And rekindling shines to take cup.
Kindling has won the Emirates Melbourne Cup.
This is National EMTV News with Meriba Tulo.
A very good evening. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday's news. The Supreme Court has refused interim orders filed by Beruz Bukhani asking the court to restore water and electricity supply into the decommissioned Manus Regional Processing Centre. Grounds on which the application were refused are based on court findings that both the PNG and Australian governments have decided to close the centre in accordance with the Supreme Court order of April 2016. This was the Supreme Court's decision handed down by Chief Justice Sir Salamo Injia.
Parties involved in this case include the asylum seekers as the appellant and PNG Immigration and Border Security Minister as the first respondent.
This morning, the Chief Justice has refused the injunctive orders.
In the 7-page judgment, the Supreme Court found that the centre was ordered to close because it was declared unconstitutional and illegal. However, in the 2016 Supreme Court decision, the court did not set a date for the closure and never made any orders on the future of the asylum seekers. It also found that no orders were issued on what approaches the PNG and Australian governments will take after the closure. In the asylum seekers' application, they claimed that the closure had inflicted extreme forms of punishment on them, which is a breach of their constitutional rights. However, in discussing the legality surrounding the Supreme Court order of 2016, the court saw that the Australian government cannot be responsible for essential services into the decommissioned centre. It also saw that the PNG government does not plan to restore these services.
There was some important decision which the Chief Justice has made in his judgment, and first is that the issue of who is legally responsible has now been somewhat resolved by the Chief Justice, that as from the 31st of October, the Australian is no longer responsible for the welfare or the administration or upkeep of the detainees on Manus Island.
While stating that the PNG courts does not have any jurisdiction over what the Australian federal government does on Manus Island, the court cannot make a definite finding on whether the PNG government is legally responsible to cater for the refugees. Sir Salamo ruled that while some constitutional rights have been breached, he said, and I quote, "It is only fair to say the asylum seekers brought this upon themselves in refusing to vacate the premises and move to the new site." End of quote.
There were 3 orders that we were seeking. First was to restrain the immigration from transferring the detainees from Lomrum to Loringo, and secondly that there has to be a restoration of water, power and electricity, and as well as healthcare. And thirdly is that the Defence Force should be restrained from using force to remove the asylum seekers out from Lomrum to Loringo. Now that orders have been refused.
Meanwhile, in Manus, the area surrounding the decommissioned centre remains restricted to the public, including media personnel, for a 21-day period. After the decision, Mr. Lomai explained that the matter can still be pursued on human rights grounds.
The immigration have put up some glossy picture of the buildings in Manus, and perhaps whether or not those establishments are ready for the occupancy of the asylum seeker, that's a matter which I will have to confirm. I am going to send some of my team to Manus to confirm whether or not there was actually those establishments that are ready for occupancy. And if they are not, then we will run back to court and tell the court that they have been lying to the court.
Thekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, lawyer representing the asylum seekers, Ben Lomai, says the PNG government must now make sure the processing of those seeking asylum must be done quickly. Lomai says for those who want to resettle in PNG, they need to be legally sorted out so that resettlement arrangements can be conducted. He also said those who refuse to remain in PNG, they will have to be resettled in a third country.
Process of the application be done quickly, and that there has to find a third country for them to be resettled, especially for those that did not want to resettle in PNG. And for those that wanted to resettle in PNG, we'll have to get that process to be done as soon as possible, so that we can be able to start, resettling people, asylum seekers at this stage.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says their offer to take 150 Manus Island refugees still stands despite her Australian counterpart Malcolm Turnbull turning down the offer over the weekend. Ardern says she suggested Turnbull accept their offer as well as the agreement with the United States to take 1,200 refugees.
I can do is make an offer on behalf of New Zealand to continue to make that offer and to, of course, highlight that some resolution with expediency would be ideal.
I think the focus needs to come back on Australia. People have been looking at PNG and what's happening there, but the country that is entirely responsible for what's going on is Australia. They're the ones who intercepted people at sea, often in international waters. The Australian government has broken international law to do it. They're effectively holding people hostage.
Evacuate Manus Now filled up the banners and placards of protesters in Melbourne today. Protesters tried to disrupt the Melbourne Cup today, saying Australia must address humanitarian needs.
Before the race start, the protesters drove around the boom gates at Ascot Vale and onto the tracks. Dozens of police arrived quickly, grabbing one protester. When she tried to resist, she was grappled onto the car bonnet. Other demonstrators waiting on the road were also detained, one pushed into the back of a divvy van. As police negotiated with the driver who'd locked the doors, racegoers were forced to clamour from carriages and along the train line. The demonstrators pleased with the disruption they'd caused.
Refugees are suffering a humanitarian crisis on Manus, yet Melbourne is celebrating the Melbourne Cup.
People are paid hundreds of dollars to go in there. Hundreds of dollars to go in there, and they probably won't get there for the race at all.
Finally, the driver removed, the car was dragged away. This is the second headache for Metro this spring racing carnival. On Derby Day, a train stoppage forced racegoers to disembark from a carriage and walk down the tracks.
It's so unsafe to get off a train, so follow the directions from the driver, follow the directions from our staff and stay safe, and the safest place is on the train.
And it wasn't the only demonstration. In a dangerous act of defiance, two women scaled a crane overlooking the racetrack to unfurl a banner, taking time out to pose for selfies. Protesters also managed to run onto the track, forcing police to increase their presence at the Cup.
From a public order point of view, we're relatively happy with the crowd to date. We're obviously entering a time, as I stand here in front of you now, where things get critical for us.
Here with National EMTV News, still to come, landowner beneficiary identification in the PNG LNG project to recommence. Stay tuned for the details. Welcome back to National EMTV News. The national government has announced the recommencement of landowner beneficiary identification for the PNG LNG project. This exercise, formerly known as clan vetting, had been on hold for numerous reasons since 2015. According to Petroleum Minister Dr. Fabian Pock, the government is hopeful of completing the identification of landowners by Christmas. Petroleum Minister Dr. Fabian Pock today announced the recommencement of landowner beneficiary identification for the PNG LNG project. This exercise will now be undertaken by a high-level multi-stakeholder team consisting of the Petroleum Department and other government agencies. This process follows on from the successful distribution of royalties to landowners at the PNG LNG project plant site area. Minister Pock will be leading the high-level team, which aims to complete this exercise by Christmas. This exercise has been allocated 3 million kina.
We're going to get senior people from police, the defense, and other government agencies and the private sector to move from, we are starting in Kikori from the pipeline areas and moving up to heights to confirm what has already been done and to identify the landowners.
Much of the work had been done between 2013 and 2015, with Minister Pok confident that this exercise would successfully be completed by the end of this year. Petroleum Vice Minister Manus Makiba, who is also member for Komumagarima, where the project is located, also called on landowners within his electorate to cooperate with the team to ensure its success.
As a member for the electorate mostly affected by the LNG project, particular PDL 1, PDL 7, 8, 9, PDL 5 and 6, I would like to assure to the people that this is a competent team and the long outstanding clan vetting would be completed under the leadership of Minister Pok.
According to MRDC, the process of finally paying royalties to project beneficiaries along the pipeline and upstream should be processed within 3 months of the completion of landowner identification.
So after that, then we will have a ministerial determination. So after the ministerial determination, then we will open the accounts. So when we open the accounts, then we will have elections of the respective directors and chairmen of all this pipeline and also the PDL. And then after that, the benefits will be paid, so that at least our landowners understand that the same precedent that we did in the plant side will also be applied on the pipeline and also the PDL.
We are hopeful that this will come to a conclusion, and hopefully they can realize some of the benefits that come from the project development.
Officials from the Department of Petroleum are already on the ground and will be coordinating this exercise in the coming weeks.
2 attempts have been done or made already, and this time we want to make sure that we finalize the entire exercise and come back. So we are appealing to the landowners to actually give us their 100% support so that we all, agree on this work and get it done and let landowners start getting the benefits.
Landowners of Gulf Province are to be treated as development partners of the Papua LNG and Pasca A gas field project. This was voiced by the Gulf LNG Elk Antelope Bluff Landowners Association, and they will continue to pressure the national government to follow correct processes when negotiating for their resources.
The Gulf LNG Elk Antelope Bluff Landowners Association has protested against the national government for failing to involve landowners in many dialogues on resources. The association's secretary told EMTV News, Gulf Province has been accommodating large revenue-making projects like the Papua LNG and now the Pasca gas field, but yet no signs of major development because of failure by successive governments.
And give the ownership rights of the resources back to the people. Yeah. And we will not stop, no matter what, here in Papua New Guinea. We will continue to pressure the government to take ownership of natural resources in this country.
He said landowners want to meaningfully participate in the projects and are calling on the provincial government and agencies to facilitate a forum.
At the moment, what we know is there's no proper landowner content for Pasca project. And we want landowner content issue to be discussed now with the national government, with the Gulf provincial government and the landowners of Oracle Bay. We want that to be now.
Lack of proper awareness has been a key challenging issue when it comes to land negotiations. What landowners want is for more awareness on the positive and negative outcomes of such projects.
There wasn't been any awareness in place. And who is here to develop this place? Who will benefit out of it? This is the thing that we want the parties of national government, provincial government and the developer to consult us as landowners. We table things together, discuss, and it has to be done in a more fair and equal way.
Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
The one-block area in Leh is tense following a fight over the weekend which resulted in the death of an off-duty police reservist. He was attacked and killed in his home, with several houses also burnt down. Police have already apprehended suspects, with investigations continuing.
The one-block community in Lae is now living in fear after one of the residents was killed on Sunday. This is the home of the deceased. The late Johnson Sengin, 49, was a reserve police officer.
I walk now, they go too late. Finish walk, I come back like sleep. Nah, there's something has been come up.
He is survived by his wife and 3 children.
Before all this, I'm salimi want to pick any thing more picking any Ximo na you run away pass. Na miximo picking na me play escape. Me play Ronigo. Na I'm at the stop now.
A fight broke out between 2 groups in the area early on Sunday morning. The fight escalated and the late Sengin, who was off duty at the time, was attacked and killed in his own yard.
Na this fight me come on top, na I'm been come, na I'm go down. Na I'm been come na kisimi bla we people innocent community.
A few blocks away, 2 houses and a chicken shed were razed to the ground during the fight. The 2 families that live here lost everything in the fire.
You know, stop. All the come does not talk sabe. All the come all put in fire. Now send me down him. Does me down him. All something in fire.
Police have maintained their presence in the area and have already apprehended suspects involved in the murder of the late Johnson Sengin.
Ongoing, so we expect to have more arrests made soon. I condemn this attack on the policeman who had nothing to do with that problem.
Lucy Kopana, National EMTV News, Lae.
Over 500 villagers from Hebaya in Nipa Kutubu district, Southern Highlands, now have access to clean and safe drinking water. This has been made possible through Oil Search through its Drought Relief Assistance Program. For the people of Hebaya village, Nipa Kutubu, Southern Highlands province, access to clean and safe drinking water has been a challenge. This was compounded due to a recent drought in this part of the country. Oil Search, through its Drought Relief Assistance Program, recently delivered a water project for the villagers of Hebaya.
Okay, 1, 2, and 3.
Oil Search General Manager, Stakeholder Engagement, Leon Buskins, was on hand to officially hand over the project to the village.
Also, we're quite pleased to be able to come in a small way, be able to give back to our villages and communities in our project area. You know, it helped them with the WASH program. It's a good initiative in support to the national government with the WASH program also.
In receiving the project, Lake Kutubu local level government president John Killer thanked Oil Search for assisting the community in this difficult time.
Now we also starting here now, and then I go along. Half said play area below me, and by going along, 4 set, I'm still a faso because all says me got big Blahamas, long Leon Baskins, Paul Sabage, or 2 black man stabbing said because 2 black boy blow you me. Now 2 black at respect long all people. 2 black and hard old people, na me got big Blahamas or 2 black man, na current lagan all seveska.
His sentiments echoed by community leaders who thanked the company for delivering a project of a high standard, a project which is in line with the national government's WASH project standards.
I mean, one something na come up and me come up na me bla Hebaya community me bla like thank him who jadi money hard work na me bla Hebaya community na watches one time.
To one time all company bla
mas lawata sa bla kama bla la place mi bla lagat basta ko la boost na kate membo ba na mi bla relax na bla kontana.
The Ahi Hope Foundation and the Ahi Council of Women are working together to drive the message against gender-based violence in Lae City. This is a lead-up to the United Nations annual 20 Days of Activism program. They focus to minimize and end violence against women and girls around the world.
The Ahi Council of Women in Lae led the awareness program on gender-based violence at the market in Lae yesterday. They began the awareness last week Friday with public speeches and interviews with the members of the public at the marketplaces in Lae. Ahi Council of Women is carrying out the awareness with the support of Ahi Hope Foundation, an administrative arm of a stevedoring company in Lae.
Our main focus is to help do awareness campaign towards reducing crime and social problems that is affecting the communities within the Ahi electorate. Also, leading up to that, campaign against gender-based violence, family sexual violence is good because you need to talk about what is really happening inside the community. Extending more law, what is the Solomon working law inside the community is not right. And there's law and there's places where they can go and report the cases. Law can take him cost blame. Come only most the culprit.
The 20 days activist program was established by the United Nations to raise public awareness on gender-based violence and to mobilize people to bring about change. Gender-based violence and violence against women is happening everywhere. Violence against women and girls continues to be a global epidemic.
We have to stand together, rise up on that 20 days of gender-based violence to fight against gender-based violence and activism campaign against gender-based violence and family sexual violence.
Organizations, groups and individuals taking part in this activist program believe that conducting more awareness on gender-based violence will educate others to change mindsets. The HIO Foundation and Council of Women will continue to visit other communities in Lae to campaign against gender-based violence. Julie Badui Owa, National MTV News, Lae.
And now a look at the finance news. The kina closed unchanged at $0.3115 US in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your kina was buying $0.304 US, $0.3915 Australian dollars, €0.258 Euro and 34.23 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, coffee and cocoa closed higher, gold is trading lower, while copper closed the day lower. Crude oil is trading higher, while palm oil and copper closed the day lower. And on the stock markets, the Dow Jones closed 9 points higher, the ASX is 60 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed 60 points higher as well. Here with National MTV News, APEC leaders meet in Vietnam. We get an update from MTV's Scott Wider after these messages. Don't go away. Welcome back to National MTV News. Turning overseas now, leaders of APEC countries, including the United States, Russia and China, are expected to begin a series of meetings in Da Nang, Vietnam, starting tomorrow to discuss globalization and free trade in the region. This meeting of world leaders is especially important for Papua New Guinea as the host for APEC in 2018. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill will be arriving today for the official handover of host responsibilities. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Rimbing Pato, and APEC Minister, Justin Chichenko, arrived in Da Nang yesterday. MTV's Scott Wider reports.
By the end of the week, most of the lesser yet important functional responsibilities of hosting meetings of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation will be handed over by Vietnam to Papua New Guinea. Last night, the APEC Business Advisory Council held a news conference where the chairman for APEC 2017 handed over responsibilities to PNG's David Toa.
Our community at all stages of development can benefit hugely from digital revolution.
APEC is one of many important councils within APEC. It is a gathering of non-political business leaders who shape regional policies of APEC economies.
The theme that Papua New Guinea will be carrying in our APEC year is digitization.
As the 2018 APEC chairman, David Toa says he's mindful of the challenges, and while APEC in Papua New Guinea will expose the need for greater digitization and internet access, it also offers big opportunities for growth.
One of the good things about being part of APEC and indeed APEC is that we get to see what goes on in 20 other economies. And there's lots of good examples of what to do. And the responsibility of myself and my colleagues is to look at those examples and see how we can actually socialize them within PNG.
Over the last 40 years, Vietnam has transformed itself into an economic powerhouse in Southeast Asia. The government slashed internet and mobile phone costs so much that it triggered new businesses. The influence of countries in Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, has been evident in the push for greater recognition for SMEs and greater access to internet technology. One of the key points for the recommendations to APEC leaders is the inclusion of women in the economy. And while Vietnam's SME sector is years ahead of Papua New Guinea's,
they still have their challenges. Dang Tai Ma operates a micro SME. She tells me she makes the equivalent of 600 kina a month and can't get financial support yet for her business. But she is well placed in a clean, regulated environment that caters to businesses like hers. The lessons that PNG can take from Southeast Asia are important for future growth, but only when you see the transformation happening in these member economies, you realize that our cost structures are too high and the bureaucracy is killing growth and progress that can be driven by the people. Scott Waide, National EMTV News, Da Nang, Vietnam.
The 2017 United Nations Climate Change Conference opened today. The aim of the meet was to top the landmark agreement in Paris 2 years ago for the reduction of carbon emissions that each country produces. Participating countries will also be discussing realistic goals in line with their national development plans.
It's not any conference. It's a meeting for tough actions on cutting carbon pollution affecting communities around the world. The meeting comes off the extreme weather experienced by places in Asia, the Americas, the Caribbean, and more closer to home in the Pacific. The 2 years' worth of experiences and hard lessons learned is now being presided over in the COP23 meet in Bonn, Germany by Fijian Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama. Colonel Bainimarama is the leader to a nation that in February of this year was affected by the ravages of Cyclone Winston. The devastation saw 44 people dead and thousands were displaced. Patricia Espinosa, UN Climate Change Executive Secretary, said in a press conference today that COP23 in Bonn will have two faces: the concerted efforts by concerned countries.
Every country has pledged to make actions in order to fight climate change. Now, however, once we have this very general framework, we need to do two things. One is to decide on the guidelines. How will this be operational? Nick says sometimes if you buy any appliance, you need an operating manual, some instructions. Well, we need an operating manual for the Paris Agreement. How exactly will be the different features of the Paris Agreement be applied to the different realities throughout the world?
And a reality check for those pursuing the ambitious goals.
So this is why the Talanoa dialogue about which Ambassador Khan was talking is so important. It's going to be the first time where countries come together, have a joint assessment of where we stand, and hopefully that will bring us to a new level of ambition, and that will guide the revision by the different countries on where they want to go, so that we are hopefully within what is needed to reach the objectives. And regarding the US, just to clarify that the US delegation is present. As you know, the US cannot leave formally the Paris Agreement until 2020. And while announcing their intention to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, they have also very openly announced that they will continue to participate in the...
Harry Agimbari, National, EMTV News.
People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, an animal rights organization, was present to create awareness that climate change starts with a meat on your plate. Renee Schkarling of the demonstration told EMTV News that removing meat from diets also helps in combating climate change.
So the message for the environment is you can't be a meat-eating environmentalist. So please cut your meat out and cut dairy, cut eggs out of your plates and become a vegan to save the environment.
In light of Melbourne Cup today, the Royal Papua Yacht Club hosted a fashion show just hours before the main race. The event showcased outfits by local designer labels Uitiki, Wantok Clothing, Lavagirl and others.
As all eyes turn to Melbourne for the race that stops the nation, the stakes were also high in fashion today. Local designers partnered with the Royal Papua Yacht Club to showcase their designs. Contestants of the Miss Pacific Islands PNG 2017 and some employees of the Royal Papua Yacht Club strutted down the catwalk showcasing colourful outfits.
With shoulder cutouts and roses.
The 4 categories on display were beach and resort, day or work wear, cocktail and evening wear and bridal, all inspired by local traditional patterns in modern contemporary design. Attendees showed up in colourful fashion for the event that took place just hours before the race. Bets were placed on their favourite horses and prizes handed out to best dressed male and female of the event. A little over 5,000 kina was raised from sales of the raffle tickets alone. Overall proceeds from today's event will go toward the Miss Pacific Islands Pageant PNG Scholarship Fund. Also on sale at the event were tickets for the Miss Pacific Island Pageant PNG 2017 Crowning Ball, which will be taking place this coming Saturday.
Tickets are going for 600 kina per person and 6,000 for a table. Why don't you just come to the night and celebrate and see the crowning of a new queen.
Helen Sea, National EMTV News.
And we'll bring you the Melbourne Cup race results after the break in Trukai Sports. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. We'll have the updates from the Melbourne Cup a little later on, but first to updates on the 7th BSP PNG Games. Host province West New Britain has confirmed their readiness for the Games, which gets underway in the coming days. In a phone interview with MTV Sports, West New Britain team manager Peter Pryor said they will be competing in all 21 codes at the upcoming Games.
With just 10 days to go before the opening ceremony of the 7th BSP PNG Games, host province West New Britain is the first to confirm participation and readiness. The team is currently utilizing the newly built facilities for training. General Team Manager Peter Pryor told MTV Sports that they are only expecting some of their Paralympic athletes to arrive in town sometime this week as they are based outside the township.
All the codes are training every afternoon. Accreditation is all complete. The only people we've got to bring into Kimby is some of the para-athletes who are still, there are still a few out, Kendry and Gloucester, out towards Talasia, because some of the schools have just closed. So the school that we'll be residing in, which is Poinini, that closed last week. So we'll be probably going into camp next week, maybe Monday.
And with over 500 athletes currently confirmed to take part in the Games and officials numbering over 600 in total, Kimbe is ready to take on the Games.
The last Games, I think we didn't really improve on the previous Games. I think we ended up 9th, and the last Games we still were 9th. So because this is we're on home ground, we're definitely hoping, because we'll have the numbers, and this is a home ground, we're definitely hoping to be in the top 5.
Heading into the tournament next week, Team West New Britain looks to finish in the top 5, if not the first. For now, training continues as they await the rest of Papua New Guinea to make their way to the west. Dinero Striker, National MTV Sports.
To the Melbourne Cup now, as always, it was hard to predict the winner, but in the end it was an outsider that won the Melbourne Cup today. Host 22, Rekindling, beat the favourites to win the 3,200 metre race, and here is how it all happened.
It's a huge day. It changes everything, doesn't it? We know that. It's the race that stops a nation, and Matt Hill calls it for the first time. It's a dream come true.
Then $10 for Humidor. So they're just about right as Single Gaze goes in. Single Gaze is in, Hartnell and Red Cardinal will be the final two. Here is Hartnell, Damien Lane, 15th in 2015, third last year. Red Cardinal will complete the line, the outside gate. Kieran McAvoy looking for his third cup. Red Cardinal is in and the field is set for the Emirates Melbourne Cup. Stand by. and they're racing in the Melbourne Cup. Humidor jumped away only fairly and got a little bit of a brush. Single Gaze out well. Towards the inside, Max Dynamite midfield early. Johannes Vermeer out well with Boom Time and also Ventura Storm. Max Dynamite behind them. Speed from the outside. Hartnell is coming over with also Marmello, Sismontane and Gallant is very deep on the track. So onto the course proper after they complete 400. Boom Time is the leader with Sismontane and Gallant. Marmello behind them, followed by Johannes Vermeer, the inside of Hartnell. Max Dynamite about 7th on the rails. Then Al Mandan, who's 3 wide around Ventura Storm, rekindling on the fence. And then came Single Gaze. Next in the field is Big Duke between horses. Then came Bondi Beach, Wall of Fire. Emily Starr is wide and 2/3 down from LeBron as they run past the judge with a lap of the track to go. Red Cardinals trying to slot in on the outside of Humidor. Then came Nikita, 2 further back in the field. 3rd last here is US Army Ranger, and then towards the end of the field, Wicklow Brave. Thomas Hobson is last. Sismontane is the leader heading towards the riverside with approximately 2,000 metres to run. 3/4 of a length in front of Gallant, who's trying to inch a little bit closer on the outer. A length and a half to the Caulfield Cup winner, Boom Time, 3rd the rails. Then came Marmello, a length Johannes Vermeer on the fence from Hartnell. Then came Max Dynamite, Ventura Storm, rekindling tucked away on the inside midfield from Big Duke. Al Mandan will be 3 wide the trip. Bondi Beach on the fence from LeBron. And then came Single Gaze. Next Tiberian, who's wide from Nikita. Wicklow Brave is pulling as they try and slow it up mid-race. Further back is Wall of Fire. Towards the end, Thomas Hobson. And US Army Ranger is last in the Melbourne Cup. 1,400 metres to run. Sismontane in front by a length to Gallant. Boom Time is 3rd. 4th is Marmello. Every possible chance. Tiberian 5th, 3 deep. Johannes Vermeer next the inside from Hartnell. Then came Emily Starr, the outer. Next is Max Dynamite getting a cushy run about 7th on the inner from Ventura Storm. A length rekindling. Then Al Mandan and Big Duke. A length and a half to Single Gaze. And then Bondi Beach. Well back in the field then is LeBron. Wall of Fire. Humidor. Red Cardinal. Thomas Hobson the outside. And well back is Wicklow Brave and US Army Ranger. Sismontane in front, but Marmello's getting closer on the outside at the 800. Tiberian moves up to 3rd. Boom Time behind those in 4th. Johannes Vermeer right behind them. They were followed by Hartnell and Max Dynamite as they run the turn. Next Ventura Storm. Emily Starr, one of the widest with Single Gaze. Further back Wall of Fire and Big Duke. Al Mandan's in the pack as well. Sismontane and Marmello straighten for home, approaching the 400 metres. Johannes Vermeer moves up with Tiberian. Max Dynamite then rekindling, followed by Big Duke. Johannes Vermeer takes the lead. 200 metres to go. Johannes Vermeer in front, but here comes rekindling. Johannes Vermeer rekindling. Max Dynamite back to the inside at the 100. Johannes Vermeer rekindling, wearing it down. Johannes Vermeer and rekindling, stride for stride. Rekindling has won the Emirates Melbourne Cup. From in 2nd place, Johannes Vermeer. 3rd, Max Dynamite. Then came Big Duke. Next, Nikita Wicklow Brave Marmello.
And that is how rekindling won this afternoon. We go for a break now. Come back with more of Trukai Sports after these messages. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To the Rugby League World Cup now, and PNG LNG Kumul's coach Michael Marum has named 2 debutants for this weekend's clash against the USA. Among them is Lachlan Lamb, who makes his debut after being named in the starting lineup.
Lachlan Lamb and Moses Meninga will make their debuts for PNG after both were named in the PNG LNG's Kumul starting lineup for this weekend's final pool game against USA in Port Moresby. Lamb will become Kumul number 283 when he dons the number 6 jersey, while Meninga becomes Kumul number 284 after being named at prop.
Young Lemmy, Lachlan, he'll be starting at 5 this weekend against USA. Also starting at front row will be Moses Meninga, so that become Kumuls after this weekend's game. So yeah, now apart from that, we just reshuffled aside a bit. We brought in Thompson, Nixon off the bench there. So, and yeah, now Enoch Maki is out of the weekend's game, and also Stanton Albert.
The other inclusion to the starting side is James Higuero at hooker. Kumul's coach Michael Marum says apart from Rod Griffin, who sustained a knee injury on the eve of the first game against Wales, the inclusion of Lam, Meninga, Nixon Put and Thompson Tete will have ensured all players had a game at home during the pool stages.
These boys have been waiting too long to go and play, so they've been training really hard for the past month. Nixon, Moses, been 18 men last weekend. They're all looking forward to their match this weekend. So and I think we spoke about everyone playing before finals, and that's just what we're trying to do.
Griffin will undergo further tests later this week.
Rod's been named as 18 man. He's done a bit of work with the physio again. He seems to be running well. So, and if he is okay, then we have to push someone out from that starting team. So also, Paulie Hayden is going to be probably playing his last test match at home, including maybe Rod if he plays. So those two players have been around for some time.
Wellington Albert has been ruled out for 2 weeks with an ankle injury.
Wellington Albert got injured last weekend, so he's out for another 2 weeks. So he won't be able to play probably a remainder of the competition here.
Elijah Levet, National EMTV Sports.
And their opponents, the United States of America, arrived in the country today for the World Cup match against the Kumuls. They play against PNG on Sunday at the Oil Search National Football Stadium. Kumuls coach Michael Marum is confident for another win for the Kumuls at home. And that ends True Kai Sports. When we come back, the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. Stay tuned.
Kai Sports. True Kai Sports.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. Worth doing with Dulux.
A look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. We begin in the southern region. A shower or two expected for Port Moresby and Popondetta. Mostly fine for Daru, Kerma and Alatau. To the Momase region, mostly fine in Lae, showers expected for Wau, a shower or two for Madang, a few showers in Wewak, thundery showers for Vanimo. To the New Guinea Islands region, brief showers expected in Lorengau and Kavieng, a shower or two for Kokopo, Rabaul, Kimbe and Buka. And in the Highlands region, Mount Hagen, Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg, all these major centres can expect thundery showers with morning fog.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. Worth doing with Dulux.
And that's been the news, sport and weather for today, Tuesday the 7th of November 2017. On behalf of the EMTV News team, pleasant viewing. Good night.